Running fans, throwing fans, jumping fans, all around athletics fans. Welcome to another episode of Talking in Ovals. I'm Alex Cuesta. He's over there. He's Dave Hyatt. What's going on, my brother?
Very good first 3 days of these Worlds.
Yes.
I got to say, I did not expect USA to get first in the men's 100 and the women's 200. Congrats to Noah and Sha'Carri, especially after Sha'Carri's little stumble semifinals. She came back strong from lane 9, which you don't see happen. They said it was the first time that anyone ever won after not being an automatic qualifier and getting through on time. So, and you know what?
Championship record too with that.
He's kind of shutting up all those people who were, she can't win this race, she can't win that race. So, just the joy and the jubilation on her face, and seeing how great it was to see Chilianne and
Sharika
Jackson give her props and love. And how about Noah Lyles, man? Ooh.
And Grant Holloway. I'm giving Grant Holloway big props too in the 110s. Like USA's picking up where they left off, it looks like, from last Worlds in Oregon.
I do like how I feel like there's not as big of a focus on the athletes who are not there at this point. We're just really going all in and focusing on those who are there, because it is a weird, unique circumstance where you have back-to-back Worlds and then you have an Olympic year next year. That never happens, but because of COVID, it kind of screw up.
Stop giving them excuses.
I'm not giving excuses. I'm
giving them excuses.
These
Go run, damn it.
They're finally twin athletes, and they literally gear for these championship meets. So when you have 3 in a row, they're not used to it. So, but there's still about 5 days left, and it's just going to be great. It's
been great. And, I definitely want to give Sha'Carri her flowers. And my stance has always been, when she gets off the social media, stops listening to the noise, she could be one of the greatest females to ever run. And she's proving it. So I am pumped for her. I guess
smoking some marijuana doesn't affect you as an athlete.
Still shouldn't do it if it's illegal before the race. Just throwing that out there. Rules are
rules.
But so I want to jump in before we do. Today is Monday, August 21st of 2023 when we're recording. If you like what you hear, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars, Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. Go find us on the socials at Talking in Ovals. I want to give a special thank you to Fast Women. They put us on their newsletter this week. We were at the bottom there, but I love it. Our episode with Noah Whitehall Johnson, I want to give it a shout out again. One of our most important episodes. She talks about eating disorders as a Division III national champion. So really important show for everyone to listen to. Last week's show with Morgan Yulhorn was lots of fun. We had another high school, now going into college athlete. She's going to be at NYU competing there. And just another amazing person, a content creator at such a young age and doing some great things. So go check out that episode as well. And people, we're coming for you soon. It is almost XC time. If we don't start getting some personal best, personal records, whatever you want to call them, soon, I'm sending Dave after you guys, because he's closer in proximity to Jersey to most of the people we're going to come after anyway. So, Dave, you ready to go after him?
I don't think that I'll have to. I think we're going to get a very good showing this fall, and I think there's going to be a lot of personal records, personal bests that will be warranted for us to give credit to it. I think it's going to be a super fast fall season, and I'm very much looking forward to watch it all unfold.
Absolutely am I. And I want to get into this week's episode, though, because this week's episode has everything to do with everything we're talking about. Because without this guest and what him and his company does here, we wouldn't have a show. We wouldn't be doing anything. So I'm excited for this show. It's going to be different. I think it's going to be fun. Today we have on Patrick Buganski. He's the business development for ATT Sports. What's going on, Patrick?
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me. I have to correct you one thing already, though.
Oh boy!
You said that we wouldn't have the sport if it weren't for the what we do, the servicing. You'd still have the sport; it would just be all run on cinders. That's the big difference.
We would have cross country too.
Oh, you have cross country, of course. Yes, of course.
And marathon and road racing. But I'm talking about track wise. So I want to jump into that right there. What is ATT Sports? What do you guys do? Why should us on Talking in Ovals, a bunch of runners, care about what you guys do?
So, it's funny. Whenever I talk about what I do, business development manager, sales and marketing for a company that installs running tracks. I always joke it's oddly specific. But yeah, as ATT Sports, we're a South Jersey-based company, but we cover the entire Northeast, and all we do is install running tracks. That's what we do. It's just track surfacing and lining and repairs and things like that, obviously. But all we do is track surfacing. It's kind of one of the things that sets us apart and why we like I said, we cover a pretty large area. Obviously, New Jersey based. That's where I'm from and where I went to school and everything. But yeah, we put in all weather surfacing, all weather polyurethane surfacing, basically is what we do. And pretty much, if you're in New Jersey, you've run on one of our tracks. If you're in Pennsylvania, you almost certainly have run on one of our tracks. And then up in New York, Connecticut, especially, we have a pretty big footprint up into Massachusetts, and pick off some colleges, a little further out. But yeah, that's what we do. Yeah, ATT Sports. We were formed in 2004 by a couple of sports industry veterans, and they decided they really wanted to focus on tracks, and that's been what has worked for us over the last almost 20 years now. But yeah, that's what we do. We install the track surfacing, that rubber surfacing. Somebody's got to put it down, and that's what we do. Which
is so neat because I feel like many of us who have run track, who talk track, it's such an important factor, but something that we don't even really think about. We're just that's a track, maybe more something that the athletic director focuses on or things like that. But it's such a cool thing that I know that I was just took for granted. And I'm so excited to get into this episode about all the little things that go into putting in a track and different surfaces and costs. So thank you so much for coming on. This is going to be a blast.
No, I'm excited. It's hopefully it's educational to a lot of people because I worked as a sports writer for almost 10 years, mainly covering down in South Jersey. So I was around the sport. I covered a lot of sports, but I started off track and field. Actually, my very first assignment that I ever got to cover as a professional writer for the Home News Tribune at the time when I was at Rutgers was a cross country meet at Warrenenko Park. So my cross country and track routes pretty much begin there. I am not as an accomplished runner like a lot of your guests. But yeah, I've been around the sport for a long time, actually. So I very much enjoy it. And, it is something that it's part of the athletic facilities that nobody really talks about that much.
Right.
The turf is super popular, the Friday night lights and everything. But yeah, it's I sometimes I call it the redheaded stepchild of the athletics facility because it's the often forgot about thing. People are going to replace their turfs more often than they replace their tracks.
Which they probably shouldn't.
Even though they're on, depending on a lot of factors, they're on similar, resurfacing or replacement schedules, sort of a thing. So I think it is something that a lot of people can learn a lot more about, and I'm happy to share that with your listeners.
Well, I want to say it's also wonderful having a fellow Scarlet Knight alum on the show, so
go Knights.
That we have in common. So,
yes,
wonderful.
Go Knights.
Absolutely. And they're building something special over there in Piscataway with track as we're talking about it. So we're excited to see what Coach Farrell, Coach Jelly, and that team could do over there. But I want to jump in because I'm curious. You talked about the Ulay polyurethane tracks, right?
Yeah.
That tends to say that there are different types of tracks. Now, we were talking a little before. Every time that you looked at a track, I just remember, they got to lay down Mondo. It's all about it. It was Mondo, Mondo, Mondo. That's all I ever knew that a track was. And I know I felt, some different tracks, like we competed at Princeton, we competed over in outdoor and indoor, and they all felt a little different, but, I had no idea what the hell the difference was. It was just a track. And some of them I was allowed to wear spikes on. Some of them I wasn't. I didn't know the difference. So what is the differences in the tracks and kind of what are the pros and cons of each of the surfaces?
Yeah. So if you look at for the overwhelming majority of applications, schools or municipalities, counties or whatever that they're going to put in a track, there's basically three main types. The lowest and in terms of cost and longevity is what's called a latex track. The very top of the world is what you said, Mondo. That's what they run on in the Olympics. And then in the middle is the world of polyurethane tracks. And that probably makes up about 80% of that middle when we talk about, when I talk about the different types of tracks. Obviously, not everybody can afford Mondo. It's not always the right application for what you're going to be using the track for. And sometimes all you can afford is latex, or depending on where you are in the country, latex makes a ton of sense too. So there's advantages and disadvantages to everything. But what polyurethane does is there's actually different levels of polyurethane. polyurethane tracks. You have anything from what we call a mat and spray, which is a very popular type of track. South Plainfield's had one forever. And when they replaced their track about 2017, they put in another mat and spray track. So as a meet of champion and New Jersey meet of champions site, a lot of people are familiar with that type of track. Also, tons and tons of high schools have them as well. But then in the polyurethane, we step up to what's called an embedded surface. And that's the ones where the rubber granules are loose a little bit. You always walk around, the little bit of loose rubber granules, telltale sign that you're on what's called an embedded surface, which is liquid polyurethane on top with rubber granules that are thrown into it. And then that makes, you paint it afterwards, obviously, and that is your track. What makes Mondo a little bit different is that latex and polyurethane tracks are built in situ, it's called. They're built on site. Mondo is prefabricated. It's a rolled good. So they ship those rolls out to the site and they literally glue them together. And that's how you put down a Mondo track. Mondo it comes at the highest price point. And it's designed for competition. It's a harder surface where polyurethane has a little more give to handle freestyle cycles and stuff like that. And it's a little more comfortable for everyday kind of training. So if that's obviously the majority of what you're doing with your track. Latex tracks have a little bit of rubbery give to them, but not the same type of, back and forth give that can handle freestyle cycles over a lot of time. So they can wear out a little bit faster than a polyurethane track does. Mondo lasts a decent amount of time, but you have to replace it when it's ready. Where polyurethane tracks, there's a life cycle to this that's going up to 30 some years where you can resurface it without removing it and redoing everything else that you have to do. So there's all different price points and there's all different applications. But what we do as ATT Sports is polyurethane tracks. Because again, you're going to cover 80 to 90% of what is going to be built, at least in the Northeast where we operate as ATT Sports. And the majority of what we do too, because we're specialized, our wheelhouse is really those embedded surfaces. So what, we built a track at University of Pennsylvania, Franklin Field. That's our track. That's our baby. We put that in
awesome.
2015. Yeah.
It's a hell of a track to have. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really special to be able to brag about that. A lot of times I say our resume kind of begins and ends with that, because if that doesn't mean anything to you, then nothing else I'm going to rattle off. But yeah, we've been very fortunate too. Princeton's outdoor and indoor. Well, Princeton's outdoor track we resurfaced twice, including just a couple years ago. And while we're actually recording this, we're resurfacing their indoor track right now inside of Jadwin.
So is there a difference in the surface for indoor versus outdoor because you have to factor in weather, or is it the same for other one?
So it doesn't have to be. Mondo is very popular for indoor applications because it lasts a lot longer in there. Also, indoor tracks do tend to take a lot of abuse because they're usually in smaller spaces. So there's a ton of equipment that gets dragged around and moved around. A lot of multi-purpose kind of things happen inside of those field houses where they have Mondo tracks. So Mondo is a very, very good indoor option, but you can do polyurethane indoors, and we've done a lot of polyurethane indoors. University of Indiana's indoor track is our track. Bowdoin College is our indoor track. Westfield State's our indoor track that we installed. So, but basically, what you're looking for to the indoor track, the biggest difference is when I was talking about those rubber granules that can move a little bit and shed when a track is brand new. Obviously, when you're indoors, there's no place for those to go. So it's a lot of maintenance to kind of sweep those up and get them in a pile and get them someplace else, where an outdoor track, it kind of takes care of itself with the slopes that they have on them, where you can blow them off a little bit and kind of the rubber takes care of itself. So the biggest thing that we do with indoor tracks when we do polyurethane indoor tracks is we like to do an encapsulation layer, which is like a spray applied polyurethane that goes in when we're all done with the rubber. And that locks in a lot of those rubber granules and kind of cuts down on some of that rubber migration. And it kind of creates a slightly firmer, harder surface that can take a little bit more, like I said, I say abuse, but, multifaceted use that
it's abuse. People abuse tracks all the time. Like,
indoor tracks. I mean, think about like, and on a indoor track, just the wear and tear of running on those turns. You know, like I was gonna ask, like, how much different is it to install a bank track than it would be a flat track?
So the bank tracks, they create more problems because we're using a liquid. We're putting a liquid down on it. So you just have to basically, that's when the expertise and the craftsmanship really comes into play, and when the experience of the people actually putting down the track really matters, because you have to put stuff down. You have to put the material down in a way that it's going to, still hold its thickness and that you can embed rubber granules into it. So yes, there's a lot of the hydraulic tracks or the bank tracks. A lot of them are Mondo because you just glue it on down. But again, I think Michigan has a polyurethane track that's banked, that's hydraulic as well. So you can do either or, but yeah, it just takes a lot more skilled craftsmanship essentially to install a polyurethane track if it's banked, especially indoors. But we don't have to worry about the rain when we're installing indoors either. So that's always good.
So I want to ask about that. How much does a hydraulic banking have wear and tear on the tracks and kind of take down the shelf life? Because obviously you're moving the whole track, so there has to be some expansion and contraction that goes with that as it's lifting and dropping. Am I correct there? And yes. Like, how much does that go into like kind of the wear and tear on like the joints that it's there?
So it shouldn't be too bad. It shouldn't really be that much. It's not moving all of that much. And again, we're talking about polyurethane tracks that are designed to have a lot of kind of pliability to them. The main thing that you're looking for in polyurethane, the main thing you're looking for any track is that you want it to be as fast as humanly possible.
Oh yeah.
But so a harder surface is going to be faster because you're not transferring any energy into the surface. So what you want is the fastest track that's also comfortable to train on. So that's what you're looking at. And so again, if you're going to do a polyurethane track, indoors to try to get that balance a little bit better, it's just certain things you're going to do. You're going to, you can build in certain seams into where those banks might happen. But again, they're designed to have that pliability to them. So moving it up and down, from a fixed angle isn't really going to do that much damage to it. Even though, again, we're used to tracks that you put them down, they don't move, obviously, for the next 10, 15 years. So yeah, the indoor tracks when it's a banked, especially a hydraulic track, it does create some problems and some, like you said, heavier wearing areas, but it's nothing that is out of the ordinary, basically, for an outdoor track.
So I have a quick question, real quick, Dave. You talked about the softness, and then with the transfer, wanted to be harder. Why the hell does BU feel like a cloud and it's so damn fast? Have you ever walked on the surface of BU? It is so forgiving. Like, obviously, the new spikes, you don't feel anything, apparently. Like, you have no wear and tear. But the old spikes, you would want to get them off pretty quick because your feet were on fire. For whatever reason, I've ran at a good share of indoor tracks, and the two biggest ones, obviously, around us now, notwithstanding the New Balance and Ocean Breeze. Mm-hmm. BU and Armory were usually the biggest two on the East Coast. The Armory sucks. It hurts.
Oh, it does not.
I hate the Armory. It hurts. And then BU's a cloud, and it's so freaking fast. Do you know the type of surfaces that are on both of those? And is there any difference? Is it all in my head?
No. So Armory was Mondo for a while, I believe. The Toms River Bubble has it's a little bit of a different surface. It's kind of like a hybrid, like it's almost like a gym running track surface. It's a little bit different. Not exactly sure what BU has, but there's a few things that are going to make that difference. First of all, the rubber that's on top. Those granules again, they're supposed to stick up a little bit, and that's also what makes it all weather, because water can go between those granules and you're still getting your traction on the top. Okay. So if those rubber granules when you push down on them, they kind of have a little bit of space, some nooks and crannies kind of fall in, push in on themselves. But also underneath of that top surface that you're running on is something. It can either be a paved base mat of recycled rubber and polyurethane. It can be all polyurethane with like what we call a full pour system, or in the case of Mondo, it's kind of that waffle sort of kind of base underneath of it. If you ever flipped over a piece of Mondo track and saw what was underneath of it, that's designed to have a little bit of give into it. So there's different factors in that, that make up the different hardness or shock attenuation of the different tracks. So the one thing I can talk about is University of Pennsylvania, Franklin Field. They have what's called a Recordtan M99 track. It's been around for a while. It's actually some I don't want to say older technology because it was certainly cutting edge, but it's very unique. And so I think this is more in line with what you're talking about, what that is, that's a full pore polyurethane system, we call it. So it's polyurethane throughout. It's the same wearing course. So what you're running on is the same as any other embedded track that we put in. So Paulsboro High School, Westfield High School, and Princeton and Penn, the top course is the same. What's underneath of that at Penn is a layer of polyurethane and then a special foaming layer of polyurethane called an SA layer. And that's specifically designed to provide that cushion, but return, not spring necessarily, but return the energy to you. And so that is why, Franklin Field does feel a little more unique. So basically, whatever the combination of the rubber granules on top, the amount of give that they have, if the track is newer or older, the older tracks kind of firm up because they don't have as much give in that top layer of rubber. And then it's kind of what's underneath in the base of the base course of the running track surfacing, whether it's, a foaming polyurethane, recycled rubber base mat, or something else. There's a few other options. There's prefabricated mats, and of course what Mondo has as well. So there's a lot of different factors that go into kind of that springiness or that softness that you're feeling.
This is so freaking cool. I love
so
this.
What? Yeah, this is awesome. So would you say that the majority of the times that you get a call, say from a high school, is that more for a resurface rather than a complete whole reinstall?
And yes, and everything in between. So so basically, the process is interesting. I think so. The first thing to kind of bring up, and we were probably going to get there, but the thing about running tracks is they're very expensive.
Oh yeah,
they're you can't say it's average of this or that because there are tracks that literally are 3 times the size of another track. Pennington School has a track that's less than 4,000 square yards, where Pleasantville High School that we did is over 10,000 square yards. So they're the exact same product, but they obviously cost different things.
Now, when you factor in that 4,000 or 10,000 square yards, does that include runways, jumping surfaces?
Yeah, that's the amount of
everything that's comes like whether they want high jump pits on both sides, they want oval pits on both sides, they want 3 or 4 runways. So all that is encompassed within the square yardage.
Yeah, when I talk, so an average track, let's go a 6-lane track with a chute with the 2 chutes for where they run the on the home side or the sprinting side. So a 6-lane track like that, 2 runways and a very standard high jump rectangle. Or the old mushroom, if you want to use that too. That's anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 square yards. That's a very standard size track, basically. So then you get into an 8-lane track, and we call the D zones. If we talk about a fully paved D zone or just runways and a high jump pad, a fully paved D zone, an 8-lane track is obviously going to be much, much larger. And then it gets nuanced from there because there's not standard size D zones. There are there's more common ones, but they're not standard size D zones. So it gets a little more complicated from there. Where Pleasantville, for instance, second largest track we've ever built, actually, they have a 10-lane straight, 8 lanes all the way around, and then 2 full D zones. That's why that thing ended up being the size it is. Wow. But so the cost is the first thing, is probably the most important thing, because these do not come out of athletics budgets at the high school level. They're coming out of capital budgets. They're coming out of facilities, buildings, and grounds. They're coming out of money that's floated in referendums a lot of times too. So that, what you asked is, when schools call us, it's for repairs. It's for, hey, we just want to get it repainted. Our track is 10 years old and we want to know what's next, or, hey, our track is in terrible shape. We want to know what's next. And a lot of times my job is to go out there and kind of diagnose what that track actually needs. If we can resurface it, if we need to rip it out, if we need to redo the asphalt underneath, because that's something that some people don't realize either. There's basically a road built underneath of every running track. It's the specification for the asphalt pavement that goes underneath of a running track it's DOT secondary road specifications. Wow. So you level off your oval, you put stone aggregate down, and then you build 2 layers of asphalt there. It's the same as building a road in a neighborhood, actually. And then, we obviously have, some quality standards and slope and pitch and, we need to be flat completely across and everything. Those are things that we're looking at for us to put our surfacing on top of it. So there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot that goes into kind of diagnosing what a school might need. And again, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, even for resurfaces. So, the last thing we want to do is tell somebody that they need to rip out and replace their entire track when they can get the next 10 years out of a resurface. So a lot of time, again, the calls come in from everybody. A lot of times it's athletic directors. Sometimes it's track coaches. Sometimes it's athletic directors who have been yelled at by their track coaches. So
that happens often.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a common occurrence.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the coaches are the ones that use it every single day. Absolutely. They're the ones that know, what type of shape it's in.
And in athlete safety, right? Because you don't want to put athletes in sitting there. And I remember, we talked earlier, I'm from Manchester. The old Manchester track for a long time at the start line, right when you went off, had giant pit. And there's the asphalt that you're talking about, right, Hyatt? You were there for that. There was asphalt underneath. And I remember there were some officials that would come and look and say, I don't know if I want to compete on this. I don't know if I want to put your athletes through this, because we were wearing spikes and everything. And, I didn't know any different. I was some bright-eyed 14-year-old just trying to run fast. I really didn't care about the surface. But now that you mention it, and like we were saying with the coaches, it's about athlete safety. If you have these spots and we're wearing metal spikes and we're slamming into it, and especially distance runners or even sprinters, if they slip on it, tracks hurt bad enough. Slipping on asphalt and falling on asphalt hurts even worse. So, I completely and totally get that. So for anyone that's listening, Patrick, that might be interested, perking their ears up, do you have a sort of range? I know you said the prices are kind of everywhere, but in terms of what is, if you have off the top of your head, what is the most expensive track you've ever put down as opposed to what is the cheapest? So people can get an idea of the highest, your Franklin Field probably is the most expensive or something, or whatever you want to do. But do you have kind of a range so that if somebody's listening to this that might be interested, a coach or something, and thinking about a new track, what could there be a range of price wise?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I get asked that all the time. I do a lot of trade shows, and the first question is, well, how much is a new track? So, I mean, that's it. If you're looking at, again, let's go with resurfaces, and but it gets more complicated than that. We were talking about mat and spray surfaces. You can respray the top that top coat that goes down, spray applied. It's so respraying a track can cost $100,000 on a much smaller track. It also depends on where we're building, private versus public, because we have to pay prevailing wage for public schools. Private schools are a little bit different. So I mean, that's the thing. Most of the time you're looking at extreme low end would be, it's still 6 figures, and you're looking at give or take $200,000 for a lot of different respray options or the lower resurface options. For brand new tracks, the top of the line stuff that we put in, which we have, we're lucky to work with a few different great manufacturers. Our main manufacturer we use is a company called APT, or Advanced Polymer Technology, and underneath of APT is the Reckertan brand, which I brought up already. So if you're talking about the eco-friendly gel product base mat that we've been putting down in a few schools now, Northern Highlands has one, for instance, Pascack Hills, Pascack Valley up north, and then Danbury, Connecticut, they all have this eco-friendly gel running track, and those can, again, for just the surfacing alone, we're talking $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 depending on the size of the track. And also another huge factor in this is the colors. We can talk about the rise.
Yeah, get into it. Go ahead, get into it.
Tracks as much as you guys want, because that is what it's all about. Colors make a huge difference too in price. Huge difference in price. Red and black are the least expensive tracks. They're the most UV stable. They're the most popular.
Which is why most schools have red and black.
Yeah, I mean, that terracotta red color. I mean, there's a reason why almost every running track that you see is that color red, and it's because it's the most UV stable color. It wasn't just decided by a bunch of track guys. When they first started putting in all weather tracks, like, hey, we like this color. Think about like roofs in the desert, Spanish roofs and stuff like that. It's that terracotta red. Yep. So it's a very UV stable color. So it holds up very well over years and years and years of being baked out in the sun. But yeah, so the colors, they can add 25-30% to the cost overall. Very, very easily, depending on what colors you're going. Honestly, depends on what shade of blue you're going with. We have 3 basic shades of blue that we like to use. And they all come at different price points as well. And then of course you guys, I'm sure you've seen all the tracks with the two colors. The colored exchange zones is all of the rage. We love putting them in. I love them. As a marketing guy, I really love them. As the guy that flies the drones and takes pictures of them, I love them. But again, so you're adding cost to doing the colored exchange zones as well. You're paying a premium for whatever color you're doing, the exchange zones in, or whatever colors you're doing. Sometimes both colors are a premium. But then you're adding extra time too, because we have to survey out those, where those exchange zones go. And, we're putting down liquid and then throwing rubber granules into it. So we have to put it down, mask it off, and cut around edges. And there's a process that goes into putting all that stuff down there. It's funny. I was just up, we were doing the track up at Shabazz High School, Malcolm X Shabazz. It's black, yellow exchange zones. And I was visiting the guys that were putting that one in. It's just really cool to see the process, because it's something that a lot of people don't see.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is so cool. But so say there's a brand new high school being built, and they need to get a track. Does the AD have to have any general knowledge of track, or do you guys kind of take care of everything? Like can they just bring you in and you say, all right, we want to put a track here, and you're like, no, like maybe it's flatter here. Like, what goes into the process of choosing what part of the high school or what area that the track goes in, and does that person who's from the school have to know, well, I want the start on this side, I want the pole bit here, or do you guys just kind of take over and just say, this is what we think is best? And do you ever get any pushback?
So it's a great question. Actually, the answer is outside the school. That's architects. That's architects and engineers. So every school district has an architect of record. But when they're putting out, new project plans, we're building a track over in the Southern Lehigh district, second at their middle school, brand new facility, being built from the ground up. So an architect and an engineer, they're going to put together the plans first. So they're going to decide where it's going to go. They're going to, go out and survey and do elevations and all that stuff. And they're going to
from the school district itself.
Okay.
That engineer comes from the school district itself.
So yeah, the school district will hire that architect and engineering firm. And then if it's going out to a public bid, they're going to put together the plans and the specifications for all of the products that are going to go into it. That's going to include the type of turf that's going in. That's going to include the lighting. That's going to include the fences. That's going to include everything that's going in, the curbing. So that's another important part of my job, is working with architects and engineers. So there's different products that are being specified. Again, we go back to, you do anything from cinder tracks all the way up to Mondo tracks. Well, you're trusting the architect and engineer that you're hiring as a school district to kind of know what the needs of your school are. So that's why it's actually really important for, again, I was excited to speak to your audience, because when a school has a project going on where you're getting a new running track, it is really good for the athletic department to be involved in that planning, because architects and engineers can't know everything about everything all the time. And things change. Running tracks haven't changed all that much over the last few decades. No. But costs and colors and trends, and honestly, even the striping and events have changed even recently with the.
Yeah, I know. Some schools, maybe they have their start on this corner, but they want to put it on, 200 meters away on the other corner, or change the side that the straightaway is on, because they've learned over years it's always windy here in our face, but if we put it on the other side, so those are things that the architect might not know, but that that's exactly the coaches every day running will have that information.
That's exactly it. It's great. We're actually working on a project down in Millville, and the athletic director there, who I've known for a very, very long time. He's been great with being very hands-on and having his coaches involved with, the striping plan that we put together that has all of the events and where they fall. Millville's another great example where that was a 6-lane straight with a really long chute that I'm assuming is a remnant of the old 220-yard straight chute that got shortened a little bit over the years. But it actually had 5 lanes all the way around. It also had an opposite slope going to the outside as opposed to going to the inside. So there was a whole bunch of stuff there that it was really great for athletics to be involved and go over all of these changes, because what they had before, if you just put that back, it would be fine, but it's not ideal. So, for instance, their common finish line sat 20 meters before the PC, where the one turn begins. And the reason for that is because you started your 100 and your 110 way back in this really long chute, and the way the track went, there wasn't a very long chute after the finish. So you move the finish back so that they have room to kind of
finish
slow
the
down.
sprint. Yeah, slow down. Yep. That makes sense.
Since we're extending the one chute and kind of moving those events up, we can move that common finish line back to the PC, which is a more traditional spot for it to be. And again, we went over all of that with the athletic director, but we literally sat down. I had a meeting with their boys and their girls coaches to kind of go over this and say, how you guys use it. Is this okay to do it this way? And, we even sat there and talked about the different distances to put the long jump and triple on the long and triple jump runways, to where we're going to put those takeoff stripes. Right. Because, we can paint them in almost anywhere. They're standard, 8, 12, 24, 32, but some people want a longer one because they might have really good triple jumpers.
Yeah, I feel like there's more and more schools now that have a 36 or even a 40 board. And how many schools actually want actual wooden boards rather than the lines? Like, is that common? Because I know, when I used to coach jumps, there was nothing better than that pop that you would get off of the actual board.
So this is something. It's really, you've touched on something I find very interesting myself, which is the difference between in theory and in practice when you're designing and laying out and putting all these things together. The takeoff boards are fantastic. They obviously serve a great purpose. It's better for the foul, identifying the fouls, and for the runners get a better feel for where they're taking off and everything. They're also a maintenance nightmare.
Yes, they are.
So, especially depending on where your runways are, if they're out, with grass on either side because they're outside of the oval somewhere, they get filled with dirt and grass, and they cause maintenance issues because they really have to. Those boards really need to be taken out when they're not in use.
Absolutely,
they barely ever are.
Yeah, right. And then usually there's a piece of a rubber filling that you can put in there, right?
We call that a blanking board.
Right.
Yep, and that's made out of polyurethane or a plug.
With the pole vault box too.
Same thing with the pole vault box. Yep, exactly. But yeah, we make a polyurethane plug, and basically we'll put that in there, which again, or it's called a blanking board, where it's literally the like a wood or a polycarbonate white piece on top, but then you take that thing out and flip it over. It's got a thin lip on that, and we put the rubberized surface in there. So that way, in theory, you would only have the entire runway would be all red except for the one board that you're using. But then in theory, you could flip that one over. You could flip the 8-foot one over to make it surface, and then use your 12-footer, flip that over to the wooden side or the polycarbonate side, and use that as a jump board. So it's one of those things that they are really good for competition and for training and again, especially for the officials. But it's one of those things that over time, especially, school to school, a school that they might host, a dual meet every other year with the way that they hold dual meets so infrequently anymore.
They don't need boards.
Exactly. So they don't ever take them out. Grass grows up out of the sides of them and it starts to peel back the surfacing even. It's something that we have to, it's a very common area for us to repair actually. So
here's what we need. Everybody get the boards so that Patrick has more work than he can even handle.
Repairs are a necessary evil, honestly. We don't ever want to see, people plow their tracks or put the lawnmower over top their tracks because repairs are expensive. And that's the thing. It's we want to do full projects. I'm always shocked at how many schools during football games don't put anything over the track, and you get all these guys in cleats. And
Manchester always puts the black mat over it, so that we walked on the black mat for every football game. I'll throw that out there. We were never allowed. We used to get screamed at because most of our football coaches were also track coaches, so they would yell at us for that. So, we've talked a whole lot, and you mentioned about all these different types of tracks, like 5-lane, 6-lane, 8-lane, this shoot, that shoot. Is there kind of a standard that you kind of have a blueprint by? Because it kind of seems, well, just in general with like tracks that you do, college, high school, because it kind of seems like a little bit of a free for all in a way where, coaches and schools can put their start line here, their finish line there. They can start their events here. And, we've all seen like 200 start here, 400, like the different markings and things like that. And so I was curious, is there kind of a standard and you kind of go over that when you're sitting down with them? Like, this is the typical standard for what tracks are, and this is the finagling room. And is there like rules? Like, because I'm like curious, are there rules by state for what is necessary for a track in order to be competition worthy? Like, what does that go into? And as a person that's laying it down, how much do you necessarily care? If someone's adamant, like, no, this is what I want, are you kind of like, okay, you're paying for it, these are the rules, but I'll do it? Like, where does that fall for you as the person that's kind of laying it down?
So, I mean, obviously, if they want it, they're the owners, they're paying for it. Obviously, to an extent, we're not going to just build a track wrong, because also we certify the running track too. We certify that it's 400. Excuse me. We certify that it's 400 meters and that all the events are in the right place. We're also, we are beholden to doing it right. And if, an architect is involved, if they're walking around, they're saying none of these events are painted on here, or why are these lane lines this, or why are these lanes this width instead of that width? Yeah. So, obviously it's communication and partnership and working with the schools and trying to, get them to understand, this is why you need it to be done this way. The biggest thing from state to state is really just what events are run.
I was just going to say that.
New Jersey runs 400 meters.
You got 400 hurdles. You have steeplechase and like
New York runs steeplechase.
Make sure you don't put many steeplechase pits in New Jersey.
Outside of colleges, right? I'd imagine.
Outside of colleges, no, we don't really. It's funny. I always think back to the how popular when I was a writer. All the girls loved going to the Rowan Open, and because it's a great event. Ringo put on a fantastic event. They had the DJ. They loved it,
and it was an all women's.
Tons of athletes. Yep. But one of the reasons they would attract some top flight distance runners, because it was one of the few meets where they could get in state that they could get a time for colleges or a seed time for certain national events and everything, because it was run at a college with a steeplechase. But there's not a lot of high schools in Jersey that have a full steeplechase with a pit and everything.
And at 300 hurdles as opposed to 400 hurdles.
Yeah, and that's simple striping. That's just simple what marks are on the track. Those are, the way our stripe, we have in-house striping crew. Actually, we're very fortunate. So the people that go out and paint the track are they work directly for us, which is
awesome,
great. And but we put down is just it's about a 3 or 4 inch triangle. And they're green triangles for where the 400 meter hurdles go, and you would just put them in different spots for the 300. Every once in a while, we're asked for 300 and 400. High school, maybe in a state that runs 300, but wants to have the 400 on there, or might have, colleges come and practice there or whatever. Then you would just do those in two different colors, just like you would for the 110 and the 100-meter hurdles. Those are usually blue and yellow. So
I want to ask you this. So Sebastian Coe earlier this year announced that indoor track is technically not a phrase anymore. They're calling it all short track. And he's saying it with the sense of that not only will 200-meter tracks be indoors, he wants to pull them outdoors as well and make 200-meter tracks outdoors popular and kind of just start making it all one thing. Firstly, does this have much effect on what you do in terms of now designing an outdoor 200-meter track as opposed to an indoor? Because I'd imagine outdoor, the events that they want to run might be a little different because you're dealing with open air. I don't know how that would work. But also, me and Dave were always curious of, would it be possible to do like pop-up tracks with what you guys do? Because our vision in our head is MetLife Field, pop-up track gets thrown there, fill stadiums, do a short track event, something quick, something awesome, like not a ton of events, like an hour-long meet where they can fill it in. But so if you can kind of answer both, does a 200-meter outdoor track kind of change what you guys do in terms of how you do things and possibilities of pop-up tracks?
Yeah. So, obviously there's not a ton of 200-meter outdoor tracks. I think Westfield High School had one for a while. Yeah. Now they have a full 400-meter track, a beautiful one, full D zones, and it's great. It's a nice track. But yeah, they had a smaller one. And actually, if you go on Google Earth and like scroll back through the years, you can actually see when only part of it was left. They built the full 400-meter track, but before they really finished their field house there's a piece of the outdoor 200-meter track. For us, what we do, it wouldn't really change a ton. It would just be, it would obviously come at a much smaller price point because it's less material it's going down and it's less time it would take to build it. The way it would be painted would be different. You would only have 2 exchange zones is the biggest thing there. But also the way that the different staggers work. So it would be striped very differently than a 400-meter track because, again, you're talking, closing a very different distance in terms of the staggers on a 200-meter track versus a 400-meter track.
I think that, it's an interesting concept. I just don't know how many people would gravitate to that because, like an outdoor track is 400 meters. But
I'm just curious if high schools would take advantage of what he said with the lesser price point.
So I don't
track out there.
Yeah, but how do you have like a 400 meter race?
I would think it would help in like smaller areas or like in cities or more urban areas where you just don't have any space.
Manasquan, yeah.
Manasquan. Yeah. You guys want to start talking about weird shaped tracks? I can certainly go into that for
Flying J.
So yeah, they have the J track that we did. I actually just drove by that track today.
We had Coach Prendergast on not too long ago.
Yeah. No, it's a. I get it. There's certainly stuff you can do on that track, and certainly you can do all the sprint work you want to do because I think it's 200 meters, just a little over 200 meters.
But you have like a 400 hurdle race if you had 200-meter track. I wouldn't think, right?
Why not run 2 laps?
No, because they're staggered, and then
weird stagger.
They're not staggered in the straightaway though. 400-meter tracks.
So you could do a very bizarre stagger and do something. Some smart mathematician could figure it out.
No, I can't see it possible.
The thing that would get me about that is the fact that the turns are so much tighter.
Yeah.
So from a technique standpoint, also from an injury standpoint too, you're now landing and turning a much more severe angle.
Absolutely.
But that angle exists in, Woodbury High School has an oval track. Those 4 turns are very, very tight.
Yep.
So yeah, there's the 200 there's certainly things that you'd want to think about with the 200-meter tracks, but I do think that there would be a place for those where you can't fit a 400-meter track. I was talking to one school where they have it, the track currently sits in like a floodplain, and they'd have to remove 40, 50 trees in order to stop the root damage that's being caused where they have it. So we went and looked at where their elementary school is, and I'm like, you could, in theory, fit a 400-meter track here, but it's going to be really tight, and you're losing your softball field and your baseball field at that point. A 200-meter track for them might actually make a lot of sense because they don't have a lot of space to build.
And the thing is, Dave,
what they have,
with dual meets going away, why not get a 200-meter track if you're just going to go to invites? If you're just going to go to invites, you don't have to necessarily practice a full 400-meter hurdle to become a 400-meter hurdler.
But it's hard
You
if
could
you're
use the
working on
straights and
relays and exchanges.
it wouldn't be easy, but would you rather take a 200-meter outdoor track or no track? It's kind of like, or a J track. Like you take your 200 meters and maybe would this be something you would consider? Do a 200-meter and then maybe just do like out the center, just an extended long straight from like the middle or an extended straight somewhere where you could work on some longer things and exchanges and things like that?
I mean, that would actually make a lot of sense. Again, if it's tight, but you still have enough space to do a full length straightaway.
At least like 70 meters, not even 100, like even 70, like you're going 20 more, 25 more, something like that to give you that extension.
Yeah. I mean, we've built them all different shapes and sizes, honestly. 200 meters is not that common. But no, I think it is something that makes a lot of sense. I don't think, again, my personal opinion is that maybe just from a monetary standpoint, eliminates your ability to host if you wanted to host, a relay event and, invite teams and use that as a revenue generator. Outdoors, I think most people would probably prefer to run on a 400 meter. I do think the uniqueness of it though could create, a pretty special
awesome invite. Invite, the 200-meter short track invite.
And run the 5,000 on it, and hope you don't lose track of counting laps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, listen, they do 5Ks indoor. They do 5Ks indoor in college, so it's something that is done, and it can get guys and girls ready for running. College indoor. I think all this is extremely interesting, and I'm curious from you as a manufacturer standpoint, and obviously you guys, everyone that's doing something of a service and something that you guys do is always trying to improve on your craft, right? Trying to figure out new ways to do things and do them better. Do you get feedback from athletes at all or from coaches on, this type of surface, that type of surface that we installed? How's it feeling? How's it doing? What is like, do you take the feedback from athletes and coaches, or is it so varied because of preference that it's kind of hard to take back? Like, how do you guys handle, I guess, getting some feedback and trying to improve on what you guys do?
Yeah. So we're an installer. So we have certain systems that we install from the manufacturer. Yeah. For instance, the mat and spray system is called a Recretan BS. Our sandwich system, which is again far and away the most popular in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, especially, and a lot of New York too. That's called the Recretan M system, where I also talked about the Recretan M99, which is what's at Penn, or the Recretan G13, which is at the Pascax, Northern Highlands, Danbury. I personally try to talk to the coaches and the athletic directors after we've installed them to get the feedback and see what they think about it and everything. A lot of them do have preferences. I was talking to a school that really wanted their jumps to be a firmer surface than the oval, because they wanted their jumpers. And the pole vault coach was the one that was most vocal about that. They wanted the hardest surface that they could possibly get. Princeton, for instance, has Mondo runways, but polyurethane around the oval and all the other areas. It's absolutely something that you take into consideration. The way they're using it. I also like to talk to coaches about what they plan to use the entire facility for. Less of a feedback on this type of surface, but what do you really need? Everyone wants to extend we want to build an extra 2 lanes. We want to make 8 lanes. Okay, well, it's very expensive to do that. It's pretty invasive. This is just the right time in the facility's life cycle to be doing that type of invasive thing. And I like to, again, talk to them about how they're using the facility, so I can recommend, hey, if you resurface this track, it's going to last you a really long time. Or, hey, you can get away with respraying the top of this, and that's going to get you, enough years out of this that, when you guys float this referendum in three or 4 years and you get that big money, then you can do the whole project. That's really what I like talking to coaches and athletic directors and facilities directors about, to find out what each school individually uses their track for, so that I can get them the right products and we can sell them the right things, or so we can mess with things. I have a great example is a school out in outside Pittsburgh, Penn Trafford High School, where they actually had to use two finishes in either PC because I have no idea why, but the chute, where the chute was, you couldn't start 110 meter, the 110 hurdles and finish at the common finish because the chute was past the finish line. So we worked with them during the resurfacing process where we extended that and basically cornered it off so that you had enough room to have the 110 meter start line plus an additional 10 to 15 meters behind that, so that they can then have one common finish line. And they didn't have to move their timing equipment when they hosted a race just to run, a couple of their sprints. So those are the really important conversations to have with, first the ADs and hopefully the coaches as well, if they're not already providing that feedback to the athletic directors, so that, again, we could pick the right time in the life cycle. When they were resurfacing was the perfect time for us because it was not that invasive for us to just add a little bit of extra paving and then the surfacing on top of it and accomplish this goal that they've had for honestly decades of having one finish line. So that was really cool to be, a small part of that project. But that's the biggest thing that we get the feedback from. Like, what are you using it for? What problems have you had? Hey, like you said, the way the sun shines or the way the wind blows. Hey, let's swap the direction we run our pole vault because whenever we practice, that sun's right in, when they're going up, sun's in their eyes every single time. We'll just switch it. When we're doing a full resurfacing, because it's not a small price tag. Well, guess what? Building, digging out and placing where a new pole vault box is going to go isn't that big of a deal. So if we're talking about, in a fully paved move stuff around, you can move things a little bit here and there without, spending another couple $100,000 to build a jumping area or something like that. So that's the biggest stuff that we want to talk to the coaches for.
It's funny because these are all the minor things that, like, unless you're involved and you're at that school all the time, like you said, like who's thinking about the pole vault pit and where it is, or the jumping pits and those types of things. And it's just really cool to like hear, and you probably go through hundreds of meetings a year just talking about this type of stuff. And I don't know how your head doesn't spin just thinking of all of it all the time. You have to take exquisite notes in order to know where you're going. Me and Dave often talk about, and especially Dave, and he's right about this, one of our biggest issues with track and field in total is there are very few track-only venues for professionals to use.
Really high schools,
colleges, they're all there. But Icon Stadium's kind of one of a kind. Like, there's not many places that kind of do what they do, where it's like, this is for track and field only. And it's extremely difficult to get to in New York City. And, has there been any talk in the industry about people wanting to build track and field specific stadiums, and not just indoor? Because we saw the New Balance facility pop up. We have Ocean Breeze. We have, the Bubble. We have plenty of places to do indoor. Mm-hmm. But in terms of outdoor, is there anything, well, at least in the Northeast, that coming from you guys in the industry, is there any hunger or taste to start making maybe a few professional track only facilities?
But they've done it for like soccer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So internationally, that's much more how it is. Yeah, so the idea of having, there's 500 running tracks in New Jersey alone. Like
crazy.
If not, give or take 100, where almost every high school has its own running track. The overwhelming majority of them. That's not the way it works, in other parts of the world, where it's more of a community-based, like, major stadium. So the idea of almost every one of them, internationally, is at minimum 8 lanes. The 6-lane tracks are very small to the rest of the world. But again, it's all you need more than you need for most of the time at almost every high school. So that's much more of an international thing to have those track specific sort of stadium. And I see it more as the funding mechanism of, well, we want as many people to use this thing that we're using, especially public schools wise, taxpayer money for. We want it to be open to the public. We want to build a football field, a soccer field, a field hockey field inside of this, so that, as many people as possible can take advantage of this. And I think that's the biggest thing, where if you're only building, one or two per county, you can say, no, this is going to be for track and field, because all of the track and field athletes from this county or from these 3 towns are going to come use this one facility. So again, my personal opinion on that is that it's because the proliferation of running tracks is so much greater here. I think that's why you don't see as many of those kind of one-off purpose-built stadiums like Icon Stadium is, where it's nothing. It's no, you run track here and you do nothing else.
So now part of me wants to kill your business so we can get more pro stadiums.
Yeah. I mean, there's colleges that are building. Again,
colleges, yeah.
College.
Yeah.
Now, do you know of any high school that has a stadium where there's not the football field inside of the track? I can't think of any.
There's not a football. Well,
a football, lacrosse, soccer, all the above. That's not just a track facility specific.
And I don't know if that makes sense at any high school. Like, well, I mean, even Franklin Field, isn't that's where they play all their football
games? The Eagles used to play in Franklin Field.
I remember.
That's a football stadium. I believe lacrosse plays on that too. I forget exactly what lines they have on that, but it's at least football that's there. There's definitely a few.
Like I know places.
I mean. Again, great school with fantastic people, but Oakcrest High School, where their football field is over there. Their soccer field's over here. I'm pretty sure they don't play anything in the middle of their track, which we're actually we just built brand new. Just finished that up actually just a couple days ago. But yeah, there's a few of them where nothing else happens to be inside of it because they have a football stadium somewhere else, and it also just doesn't happen to be used for field hockey or soccer. But nothing where it's like an actual like stadium where we will host events. Actually, I'll tell you what, there is one. Thomas Edison Park, Middlesex County Parks. We built that originally brand new, and we resurfaced it a few years ago. It's a beautiful facility. They host a lot of AAU events. They have a steeplechase. It's actually I love that facility from a layout standpoint. It's got where the chute is, where the sprinting start is. There's a big paved sidewalk area that would be great for like a clerking area. On the outside, there's like a hill around a third or 2/3 of it. So, teams could sit up there, put their tents up there, and you can get a nice view. It's right in the middle of the state. It's a really, really nice track. And if they might have a soccer field in the middle of that, but it's also a really nice large park. So they have other soccer fields, but that's actually a pretty unique place. It's kind of it's just a red running track. It's a nice surface, and they take really good care of it.
There it is, Dave. Talking in Ovals Invite, sponsored by ATT Sports. Let's do this. Yeah. Let's do this, everybody.
But apparently they do host a lot of AAU events, especially kids coming down from New York and stuff. One of the reasons is because they have a steeplechase there.
That's really cool. And, and I think we need more of those. And I think the more we get of those and the more that they see that people want to use these in the community, it might prompt them to kind of care about track and field, because I think like you guys, it's good at the high school and the scholastic level. Once you get past the scholastic level, it's very hard for the pros to kind of try and find their way. And part of the things that we want to do here on Talking in Ovals is to try and get pros paid, because, there's some of the greatest athletes on the planet and they get paid like crap. They make some decent money if you make worlds, but if you didn't make worlds, you could still be a world-class person. And, we have a bunch of people we've interviewed that are world-class runners and they don't have sponsors. And it's just, just the whole entire way it works, but that's convoluted. So I want to ask you, is there any new tech on the horizon in terms of track and field? You talked about your eco-friendly, surface thing. That's really cool. Anything new outside of, the eco-friendly thing you talked about that is on the horizon that we might see revolutionizing track and field in terms of the surfaces.
Well, yeah, just to kind of close the loop on the eco-friendly track. What it is, again, going back to the top course is going to feel the same. What's underneath of it, we call that, again, it's a full pour system. So what it is polyurethane underneath of that, but what it is, a plant-based, soy-based polyurethane gel. It's an A-B component mixed together, and we pour it out and we rake it to the specified thickness, and we put a little bit of recycled rubber in there for a little bit of volume and a little bit of additional grip for our top course that's going to go down on top of it. But that's actually really exciting, because the idea that could actually last a little bit longer, just to some of it's hydrophobic, so it actually repels water, as opposed to a typical track base mat is porous; it can get moisture in it. So over time it can break down a little bit. So the idea that could last a little bit longer, plus it's eco-friendly, it's recycled or renewable material. That's really cool, and that over time that's something along those lines will probably become much more of the norm. Another thing that they do have that's very much progressing is actually built into the track, essentially timing loops, and it's all based on magnets. It's something called Smart Track. Recordtan does have it, and they're kind of the pioneer in that. Where you install magnets inside the track, you shoot them down, and then there's like a receiver basically that you would wear, and it can measure a ton of different things. So you can measure your stride lengths and all kinds of things like that. So it's really, really good for the elite level guys, especially everybody can really benefit from it, but especially your sprinters, where there's so much more technique involved in everything. But yeah, so there is the idea of smart tracks that'll have like built-in timing loops. The technology is there and it's progressing. And yeah, there's a handful of tracks. Atlanta Track Club, which I know is a big player, and they have a track down in I guess where Atlanta that has that smart technology in it.
That's cool.
And it's really cool. And I personally would love to see that get to the point where it's cost effective enough that almost everybody on your team could have some type of a receiver, so that you coaches don't have to sit there with a stopwatch and time every single kid that's doing all your 400 repeats or whatever they may be. Especially when you get some of the JV and freshman kids, they can they could just wear something that automatically keeps their time,
like a watch or something like that.
Yeah, that would be huge. So,
and that would be massive. If a Garmin or something could jump on and work with them, and here, get your Garmin watch with your receiver, it connects to your Bluetooth, connect to your track. That sounds fucking awesome. I'm not gonna lie.
The beginning is there with the Recordtan Smart and the smart track technology that they have. Again, it's all based on you install magnets down in there, and inside the track it actually goes like on the lane lines. And then, the receiver picks up and measures all kinds of, gives back all kinds of data and feedback. So I see a technology like that becoming more and more popular. As it's always going to start at the elite levels as the costs are up there, and it becomes, more popular. Those costs will come down, and they'll improve things with it too. So that's another thing I can see. Changing things. It's a slow process to kind of change technology and running tracks, though.
I could see that being cool from like a broadcast standpoint too, because then you can like tap into each individual runner and what they're doing. And I can imagine if it gets more in depth, like this is so-and-so's heart rate compared to so-and-so's heart rate. Let's see if this runner breaks down based on what we know about physiology. Like, I feel like you can like really get into the weeds, and with the track nerds, like really start to enjoy it. Like, imagine Hyatt watching the 1500 and watching Faith and Sifan tapped into both of these, and you can kind of see how their body chemistry is working as they're about to both go kick. Like, that could be some really cool stuff. Like sports science, like could tap into that too. Like I like that. I think that's really cool. Dave, that's something we have to monitor, and
that's something that could be
awesome.
Absolutely down, coming down the road. Again, it's still probably a ways off because it just cost, but it's the beginnings of it are absolutely there, and there are absolutely there's dozens of tracks throughout the country that have some type of smart technology already installed in them that they're absolutely using. So
it's freaking sweet. All right, so Patrick, I don't know how much you're going to go in depth, but I think you can help because you do a lot with track and field. One of our things we like to ask our guests is how could we improve the sport, to make it more enjoyable for the casual, to get more fans involved, to do these types of things. Now, you surface tracks, you install them, and you kind of add the flair that anybody wants to add, right? In terms of color schemes and things like that. From somebody from your standpoint, what could be done in the sport of track and field to kind of attract more people to enjoy the sport and maybe watch it and, do things like that?
I mean, I'm a marketing guy, so I'm just going to say, I think, track kind of has a marketing issue in general.
Nice.
It's, again, so many times I have to make the joke where it's a frame for the football field is the track. That's how it's treated at a lot of schools.
True.
Yes. But I think it's a shame because so many, it's not just, we only have 30 kids on our track team total. Yeah, but every single gym class uses the track. Yep. And, a lot of the other athletes, train on that track and use that track. The community uses the track. So it's something that is used by so many people, yet it's often it's on the back burner so many times. It's the last thing that gets, taken care of in a facility. And I think that has to do with just, the overall popularity of the sport. It's obviously, it has huge numbers, but it's not football. It's not basketball. And it just, I would love to see it kind of, change that kind of perspective where, I think track is an incredible sport. It's cool. The stories are incredible. Some of the stories I got to tell as a writer, I'll never forget. I'm so much better as a person for the people I met and the stories I got to hear and tell from my time, around the sport of track and field. It's, one of the things I love about it is it's for everybody. The cost of admission to go run on a track is fairly low. And so one single track team will have all walks of people on it and with all different body types and all different skill sets and all different personalities. And so there's something for it that appeals to everybody. And I just think it's still, treated as the second class citizen in school facilities. So it's I don't want to say it's a PR problem, but I think it's something that just purely marketing and just the image of the sport and getting people to understand how popular it is and how beneficial it is. I mean, go find an NFL player that didn't run track and field at least, a little bit or do something
to the shot put, lineman throwing and things like that.
Go find one of it's like 80% or something. Last stat I saw, it's 80 to 90 or something like that. Did either track and field or cross country, at some level in their life, and then it's just, but let's all invest in football. Like, why aren't we investing in the sport that more people do, and everyone and the people in these most popular sports, quote unquote, also use and take advantage of? So that's a big thing for me. It's the marketing. It's sport for everybody.
Absolutely.
I've seen many schools that have like a brand new turf field, but like a 30-year-old track. Like,
I see it all the time.
And it's like
all the time. Yeah. Especially out in California for some reason. Yeah. Oh, they'll flip those turf fields every 7 or 8 years. And we'll make the track last another 15. I'm like, you should have replaced it at 10, guys. Different tracks last all different times. It depends on the type of surface, how it's used and everything. But one thing I always tell people, knowledge is key. If your track's 10 years old, you have to know what your next step is. Because if it's falling apart and you're getting $10,000, $15,000 worth of repairs done to it every year, it's way too late to be asking. It's going to take a few budget cycles to get this across the finish line. And I think that kind of goes back to the point I was making. It's always, you can do everything to the football field. We can get new baseball dugouts, but the track, hey guys, we've been talking about this for 4 years. We've tried to get this into the budget, for so many years. And these projects just take a long time to come together. New Providence High School, I've been working with their athletic director, Vinny, for 3-4 years, 4 years now, since before COVID. South River took a bunch of years to come together. Montville, which is a beautiful black and green track that we did. Manville was 4 years in the making. And even at the college level, you think, Division I athletics, they have tons of money. They just on demand, just take care of their facilities. We resurfaced the College of the Holy Cross. It's beautiful. It's gray with purple exchange zones. Nice. And it's gorgeous. That was 5 years worth of, meetings and staying on top of things and working with, the school and architects and contractors to get that done. And Yeah, it's just sometimes it's just a forgotten part of the facility. And when people are asking, hey, we need help with this, it's like, you should have asked 2 or 3 years ago. So one of the messages I always try to get out there is, if your track's 10 years old, know what your next step is, whether it's full replacement, whether it's, hey, it's actually still in great shape. Just repaint the lines and you guys are good for another few years, or anything in between. Just knowledge is power. And that's why, coaches can be the first people. The coaches can be the canaries in the coal mine and go to the ADs and say, hey, call this guy at ATT Sports. He wants to get out of the office and go, walk a few running tracks today.
Do you charge for an estimate if you go out? Are you charging to go out and look?
Nope, absolutely not.
Okay, it's information I think people would like to hear just before they even ask. So if you just want Patrick to go take a walk on your track and see what it is, he just likes to spend time and talk to people.
Yeah, I really do. I actually really like diagnosing a track and kind of looking around and saying, like, why is this the way it is? Why is this put here? When was all this put together? Why does this look brand new, but this looks 40 years old? And that's one of my favorite things to do, actually. After just meeting people and everything. Actually, one of you guys are friends with Will Wilfredo over at South Brunswick.
Absolutely, he was my college roommate.
Yeah, so he's actually one of my very first cross country meet that I covered as a writer. I met him, and he was a brand new coach then. So that would have been back in 2005, I think.
Yeah.
2006. Yeah, and I met him. I'm sure he doesn't remember me, but he was literally, I had to talk to one of his runners that day. And so, yeah, it was Jim Lambert. The absolute best. My instructions.
We had Jim on not too long ago.
I know. I listened to the episode. It was fantastic to hear him go run through some of these, athletes. He's talking about the runners and Nick Vina. I covered Brahim Days down in Bridgeton.
Okay.
Absolutely incredible. And I know the Wilkes really well, Ray Wilkes. He's rattling off these folks from Bridgeton and everything. I love it. Actually, Josh Awatunde from Delsey. I covered him when he was a phenomenal football player.
Yeah.
He was throwing the same time as Nick and Brahim were, and was incredible, but was third or fourth best all the time.
66.
He's third best in the world, or third best in the country. It's incredible. So I always go. My instructions that very first cross country meet at Warrenenko Park was, go find Jim Lambert, tell him you're with the Home News Tribune, and he'll tell you what to do. And to this day, that's when I met Ed Grant. And
that's hilarious. Did you hear Jim Lambert say that when he first got out there, he went to go find Ed Grant? So it's funny how that cycle just keeps on going.
I loved listening to that episode with Jim. He's salt of the earth. I make sure I say hi to him every year at the Penn Relays. Actually, I can plug a little bit here. I hope.
Go for it. Plug away.
So, at the Penn Relays, Recordtan hosts a coach's hospitality area that's up inside the stadium, actually, and they have refreshments, some drinks, and some light food, and they have a live stream of the actual on field of the flow track feed, and so they host that. Since I've familiar with the Penn Relays from covering it for so many years and everything, I'm a big part of it, and obviously since it's our track, I man that for them. And so, for all the coaches listening, coaches hospitality area is open to everybody with a coach's pass for the Penn Relays. And so when your runners are out there doing their thing, going through their warm-ups and the different, the clerking area and everything, I know it can take a while. You're away from your kids. Come up and have a cup of coffee and a light snack and talk track and field with ATT Sports.
Love that. Love that. Definitely go over there if you're at the Penn Relays. Yeah.
They send out a ton of information around that, in the coaches pack. It's in the program and everything too, but trying to get more and more.
Listen, not every coach goes through everything in that packet with a fine,
Oh, absolutely not.
So it's sometimes
that does keep growing every year, though. It's actually really cool
great
to see.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. I love the meet needed it. They didn't have anything like that, and knowing how
coaches love food and coffee. If there's food and coffee there, coaches will find it. So if you tell coaches food and coffee, they will go there and then they'll bring it down and rub it in the athletes' faces too, because It's a fun thing to do.
Some of the coaches will hang out up there for hours, and I love it. I'm just talking to people, making friends with everybody. I see the coaches from my high school that, they're in there all the time and everything, and it's actually really cool because just over the last few years, or only 2 years, just seeing the people come back and everything, it's super exciting.
That's awesome. All right, so Patrick, thank you so much for coming on. This was a blast.
Fantastic.
This was so informative, man.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It just really was fun. I love, educating people. I love talking about this sport, though. It really is special, and I'm very lucky to be in the position that I'm in, where we're providing something that these student athletes are using, and that so many people get to use and just don't really think about too much. And so I'm lucky to be in the position that I'm in. I'm very much appreciative of the opportunity to talk about myself and ATT Sports.
Yeah,
100%.
It's just having this wealth of information now that I have, because it's something that we've coached or we've run, but you never put that much thought into everything that it all entails. So this is wonderful. Thank you so much.
And also, it's great what you guys are doing. As somebody who was a sports writer that eventually moved out of the industry to pursue PR, marketing, social media sort of thing. That's kind of how I ended up where I'm at. There's just not a lot of coverage out there. What Jim does is absolutely incredible. But it's just the sheer idea of the manpower of, the newspapers just don't have the manpower to cover track and field anymore.
I don't know if there even are any more newspapers.
Yeah, it's tough. When I started with the Daily Journal down in Vineland, we had 6 people on our staff and we covered 9 schools. There's not a dedicated Daily Journal sports writer anymore. So what you guys are doing is really important for the sport. It's really important. I'd love to see more and more coverage, and this type of thing is fantastic for the kids first, but then for the health of the sport and everybody who loves it. It's really important. So I appreciate what you guys are doing.
And we love it too. I look
do.
forward to every single Monday to get to talk to people like you and just learn all different aspects of this great sport, because there's so many different avenues and places that the sport goes. It's not just about what happens, with the athletes. It's, putting in tracks. We're going to have someone on at some point to talk about how to run a track meet, they're just trying to get all these different aspects of that encompass the whole sport itself. Yeah,
there's so many things, the timers, the officials, everybody. Yeah,
we're going to talk to some officials. We ragged on them. We definitely want to get some officials in so we can hear their side and then sympathize with them. So once again, he's Patrick Buganski, business development for ATT Sports. Is there any social media, any plugs for ATT Sports or anything like that people can go and keep track of the beautiful tracks that you guys are making? There's got to be an Instagram. You guys have to have an Instagram and take some pictures and put them on there. What do you guys do?
I prefer Twitter. I prefer Twitter myself.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
X.
Yeah, X. I'm
sorry. Don't dead name
Twitter. I do prefer X. But yes, we're fairly active. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We do have an Instagram. I haven't updated in some time, I will admit. But yeah, we're ATT Sports Inc. ATT Sports Inc. on Twitter. And I do post, links to finished projects. Cool. I try to put up different past projects on our website with some photo galleries. We did the track up outside of Rochester. It's all blue. Webster Schroeder, put some pictures up there. We did a black and gray track out Pine Ridge High School outside Pittsburgh. Some beautiful pictures of that are up on there right now. And I think we're putting up some pictures of the Hunt School that we just resurfaced too. That's black and red. So those should be up by the time this posts. I think I just put pressure on myself to get that post up and
I'm looking at it now, and there's some track point on here. If you like looking at the aerial views are just amazing. Some really cool stuff that you did there. So yeah, this was a blast. If you guys like what you heard, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5-star, Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. Find us on the socials. Go search Talking in Ovals. We'll be back next week. We have more great shows coming on, more great guests, and hopefully keeping it unique and making sure that everyone can get their taste of track and field. So once again, everyone, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. So long.